I was completely stuck, racking my brain for a better idea, but nothing came. The script I was working on was pretty much done, but I wasn't happy with the title that I had picked. And so I'm in my notes app on my iPad, which is Craft, brainstorming phrases, and I'm about to give up when I remember that I got an Apple Pencil. Where is it? I got an Apple Pencil for Christmas, and that Craft lets you add sketches to your documents, so I picked it up. I was really just getting bored and using it as a distraction, but as soon as I put the pen to the screen, I wrote 4 words: "Get out of line," which ended up being the text that I used on the YouTube thumbnail. I was stunned. Where did that come from? It was perfect, and it shook loose the title for that episode. There's a side door to your creativity with no bouncer. My brain was flooded with questions. Why did this happen? How does it work? Why does it work? And ultimately, is handwriting a shortcut to good ideas? So today we're going to explore those questions, and I think you'll be surprised by some of the answers. Okay, so let's start with what actually happened in my brain when I picked up the Apple Pencil. Because here's what I thought was going on. I was procrastinating. I was bored. I was avoiding the real work. But that's not what the science says. In fact, there are 3 specific things that happened in that moment that basically turned my brain into a creative engine. And by the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly what they are and how to trigger them on purpose. But first, let me tell you about a researcher in Norway who wired up people's brains to figure out what's actually different when you write by hand. Audrey Vandermeer is a neuropsychologist at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and she wanted to know, is handwriting actually different from typing, or does it just feel different? So she put high-density EEG caps on people. You know, those caps that look like, the mad scientist or something. So she had them either write by hand or type on a keyboard. And here's what she found. When people typed, their brain patterns were narrow and repetitive. Makes sense, right? You're just tapping on the keys over and over the same way with very, very little actual movement. But when people wrote by hand, the connectivity patterns across their brains became far more elaborate. She's talking about the motor cortex lighting up, the visual areas activating, sensory regions engaging, and most importantly, the hippocampus, which is your brain's memory hub, getting involved in a way it just doesn't when you type. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you tried to solve a creative problem by typing it out on a notes app? How'd that work for you? I mean, it can work. I've done it a lot. But what I'm telling you is your brain wasn't even fully online when you did that. That sounded a little harsh. Okay, what I'm trying to say is you could be more creative by switching to handwriting or doodling sometimes. But that's only part 1 of why the Apple Pencil unlocked my breakthrough. There are 3 more factors at play here, and the second one, it has to do with what happens when you stop trying so hard. So here's the question. Why did the idea show up then? Why not 5 minutes earlier when I was actively trying to come up with a title? To answer that, I need to take you back to 1926. There's this psychologist named Graham Wallas. He was one of the co-founders of the London School of Economics, and he wrote a book called The Art of Thought. In it, he proposed that creativity doesn't just happen. It moves through 4 predictable stages: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. Preparation is when you're actively working on the problem, gathering information, grinding it out. Incubation, that's when you step away and stop consciously thinking about it. Illumination, that's the aha moment, the breakthrough. And verification, that's when you test it and refine it. Now, for a long time, this was just a theory, a nice idea, but then researchers started testing it. One of the most important studies came from Benjamin Baird and his colleagues at the University of California, Santa Barbara. They wanted to know, does taking a break actually make you more creative, or does it just feel that way? So they gave people creative problems to solve, specifically something called the unusual uses test. Like how many uses can you think of for a brick, that kind of thing. Then they split people into groups. Some took a break and did an undemanding task, something easy that didn't require much brain power. Others did a demanding task during their break, and others just rested. And then one group got no break at all. Here's what happened. The people who took a break and did the undemanding task, they came back and improved their performance by almost 41% on the problems they'd seen before the break. 41%. The people who did the demanding task, no improvement. The people who rested, no improvement. No break, definitely no improvement. So think about this for a second. You've been told your whole life, push through, work harder, stay focused. But what this research is saying is that sometimes the worst thing you can do when you're stuck is keep working on the problem. What you need is the right kind of break. And here's the twist. It wasn't just any undemanding task that worked. It had to allow for something very specific to happen in your brain, something that most of us have been trained to avoid. Let's take a look at your brain's secret weapon. Okay, so Baird and his team wanted to know why the undemanding task worked so well. What was actually happening during that break? So they asked people what were they thinking about during the incubation period, and what they found was fascinating. The people who improved the most weren't the ones who kept deliberately thinking about the problem. They were the ones whose minds wandered. In fact, the more their minds wandered during the break, the better they performed afterward. It was a direct correlation. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network. This is the system that activates when you're not focused on a specific external task. It's what's running when you're daydreaming, when you're in the shower, when you're folding laundry. And for a long time, scientists thought this network was just your brain idling, like you're not doing anything useful. But recent research has completely flipped that idea. It's actually a secret weapon. It turns out the default mode network is essential for creativity. It's the part of your brain that makes connections between distant, seemingly unrelated ideas. It's what allows you to see patterns that your focused, task-oriented brain would never notice. In fact, studies show that highly creative people have stronger connectivity between their default mode network and the brain regions responsible for focused attention and cognitive control. So let me tell you what was actually happening when I picked up the Apple Pencil and started doodling. My conscious mind, the part that had been grinding on this title for a half an hour, finally shut up, and my default mode network kicked in. My brain started making connections that I couldn't have forced it to make. And boom, get out of line. That physical, spatial, tactile engagement of picking up the pencil is what pulled my brain out of its loop and into a new mode of thinking. But the feeling of giving up and activating the default mode network primed me for a creative jolt. So let's talk about what this really means for you. Okay, so here's what I want you to take away from this. Your best ideas don't show up when you're forcing them. They show up when you've done the preparation, when you've put in the work, and then you step away and let your unconscious do its thing. But not just any stepping away, it has to be the right kind. So the next time you're stuck on something, a title, a script, a business problem, whatever, here's what you do. First, put in the work. Research it, think about it, wrestle with it. That's your preparation stage. Then, and this is the part most people skip, stop. Step away. Do something undemanding that lets your mind wander. Not Netflix, not scrolling on your phone. Something light. Fold laundry. Take a walk. And here's the secret weapon. Pick up a pen and doodle. Because when you write or draw by hand, you're activating a completely different network in your brain than when you type. You're giving your unconscious room to work. You're letting the default mode network make those surprising connections. And that's when the breakthrough comes. It's not magic, it's neuroscience. And now that you know how it works, you can do it on purpose. So I want to challenge you this week, the next time you're stuck, don't push harder, don't force it. Step away, grab a pen, doesn't have to be an Apple Pencil. Just let your hand move, see what shows up. Because I promise you, your brain already knows the answer. You just have to get out of its way. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep the flow.